So this week, as part of Do You Know Him, we're thinking about Jesus the revolutionary. I don't know what immediately comes to mind when you think about the word revolutionary. Maybe you think back in history to people like Che Guevara or Mao Zedong, or maybe you think of the American Revolution or the French Revolution with its guillotines. Whichever revolution or revolutionary you're thinking of, I imagine that it associates with violence and bloodshed and death. Maybe not with Jesus. Jesus, who is called the Prince of Peace, the Wonderful Counselor. So what exactly is revolution? Well, revolution can be defined as a sudden, complete, or marked change. Revolution can be defined as returning things to how they should be. Jesus was born into a world of political upheaval. It was a world where violence was common and humanity was a battleground. Jesus was born into a time that was challenging and difficult. He was born as a baby in a small northern town. He only lived for 33 years in relative obscurity, but he managed to change the world, to turn it around. He was revolutionary even in his short life. Jesus was, it seems to me, revolutionary in the things that he said. He was a bit unpredictable in the kind of things that he required of people. He said to his disciples, "People say love your friends, but I say love your enemies and do good to the people who persecute you." Well, that's a challenge, isn't it? Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, the law says don't murder. Well, I think we mostly all agree with that. But Jesus said, if you think hateful things towards another person in your heart, well then that's the same as murder. Well, that's a huge challenge, isn't it? And something would totally change everything if we live by that. Jesus was also revolutionary in the way that he dealt with people. For example, the way that he treated women was completely countercultural. In his day, the rabbis said that you shouldn't teach women things about God and things about the scriptures, but Jesus frequently did. He let women sit at his feet, which was the place where disciples would sit, and he taught them, he talked to them, he respected them, he gave them dignity. Jesus had women as his friends and followers from the early days because they could see that the way that Jesus' life was, the way that Jesus' teaching was completely different. It completely revolutionized their status and sense of worth. Jesus also taught to people who were understood to be unclean in his culture, people who were prostitutes, who were on the margins, who other people didn't have time for. Jesus had time for. He reached out to those people and said, your life can be different. You can have purpose and significance in your life in a new way. He reached out to Zacchaeus, the tax collector. Tax collectors were hated by the people that employed them, the Romans, and hated by their fellow Jews. But Jesus said to Zacchaeus, come on, let's have tea together and your life could change. Your life could look completely different if you follow me. You could have worth and value. Jesus reached out to people who were diseased, like the lepers, those who had to go around with a bell around their neck saying, unclean, unclean, who no one wanted to be near. Jesus reached out and he touched them and he healed them and he brought them back into the mainstream of society again. He was completely different in the way that he lived. We live today, sadly, in a culture where terror is part of our vocabulary. We're kind of used to it. We're used to revolution being tied up together with terror activities. But Jesus brought a different revolution, didn't he? A revolution of love, a revolution of grace, a revolution which changed things for the better for anyone. We've watched people who've decided that they will take their own lives in the name of revolution. Jesus decided that he would give his life on a cross so that we could have life in him forever, that we could know God as our Father, that we could have the kind of life that we were meant to have right from the beginning. Jesus' revolution is brought through the cross because he loves us and he wants us to know how much we are loved by God our Father. He is a revolutionary in the things that he says and he does and the person that he is. He turns everything back around to how it ought to be. He makes everything right again.